The patrician families of Florence erected monuments to their own prestige in the palazzi of the 15th century. Palazzo Rucellai by the architect Alberti was admired for its classical detail and the elegance of its proportions. More magnificent was the palace designed for Cosimo de' Medici. This was not simply a home, but the center of a vast banking empire. Massive doors and rough rusticated masonry on the ground floor, increasingly smoother stonework above, created a style that was to be imitated by palaces and banks in Europe and America for the next 500 years. The Medici created an elegant society where artists and scholars studied astrology and mythology, reviving antiquity for their private pleasure. Cosimo commissioned the humanist Ficino to translate the works of Plato, and out of this intellectual climate came the paintings of Botticelli, combining the sensuality of pagan mythology with themes and images from Christian art. In his painting of the Primavera, Zephyrus, the wind god, enters the scene and seizes the wood nymph Chloris, whose mouth issues flowers as she is transformed into Flora, the goddess of spring. In the center stands a figure who resembles both the Christian Madonna and Venus, the goddess of love, and who directs the dance of the three graces. Naked Venus, seen here in Botticelli's The Birth of Venus, symbolized divine love. This was a nude based on classical forms, which also suggests a baptism and a rebirth.
In Renaissance Florence, the nude again became the focus of artistic effort. Donatello's David, probably commissioned by the Medici, with its obvious reflection of the Roman past, is a masterpiece of technical virtuosity and erotic suggestion. But it was more than that. It was also a brilliantly inventive symbol of the Christian faithful, armored only in the Word of God. Finally, in Brunelleschi's church of San Lorenzo, we find the two bronze pulpits that Donatello left unfinished at his death in 1466. Here, for the first time in Western art, we find a true late style that leads on to the work of Titian and of Rembrandt. Leaving behind the technical perfection of his early work, Donatello now engages with his material in a rougher, more direct manner, biting into the bronze with his chisel to convey a more emotionally charged message. Here, in the harrowing of hell, Christ's urgent figure reaches through the crowding souls to seize the arm of Abraham and pull him to salvation. And when Christ's heavy figure surges from the tomb, it is not a joyous resurrection, but a battle won against the odds. Below, the soldiers sleep as the old order passes. Christ's face seems burdened with the sins of all mankind as he climbs up from darkness into light. The fleeing devil of the harrowing has become a scorpion on a Roman shield. Then, finally, the drama of salvation is resolved as the ascending Christ looks down in love and takes his leave of his apostles.
Looking over the rooftops and domes of the city, we can try to take an overview of that extraordinary period of artistic outpouring. It was, after all, a city whose population never even reached 100,000, continually riven by faction and strife, and yet which produced some of the greatest figures in the history of Western culture, from Giotto and Dante to Michelangelo and Leonardo. It was, for example, a Florentine, Amerigo Vespucci, with Florentine maps and instruments, who named the continent discovered by Columbus. The founder of modern science, Galileo, worked in this city. With all of them, it is the freshness of their thought, their willingness to experiment, their modernity, which impresses us today. But there is another side to the story. Civilized human life depends not only on modernity, but on a healthy assimilation of the past, both critical and imaginative. The Middle Ages had proved incapable of doing that. But here, in the Florentine Renaissance, we can see the reintegration of the classical worldview into modern life. Not merely their learning, but their pagan humanism and their pantheism with its incomparably rich mythological themes, which, as we now understand, contain such profound psychological insights. What we see here in Florence is what they made of that tradition, just as this is what we are making of them. But its continued reinterpretation is a necessity for the West if it is to understand its own cultural tradition. The art of Renaissance Florence came out of the city-states of central Italy. By contrast, our story of art in Northern Europe begins in the late medieval courts of France. It was a time of violent contrasts. In the luxury of the court, the Duke enjoys his banquet, while the peasants shelter from the snow. In their hovel, they bear themselves by the fire. These illuminations were painted around 1414 by three brothers from the Netherlands, the Limburgs, at the French court of the Duke of Berry. The detailed realism of these faces and landscapes was to be a key feature of northern art in this period. The Limburg brothers began their career working for the brother of the Duke of Berry, Philip the Bold, Duke of Burgundy.